We are really in the thick of the offseason now with the draft over, rookie minicamp coming up. I'm Kevin Carroll. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone Podcast.
And I'm Andy Young, rookie minicamp on the way here. A lot to reset as we dive deeper into the Bills' offseason workouts, OTAs, minicamps, all that good stuff.
Yeah, so here we go. We're going to dive right into it, go over some of this stuff. We have Matt Parrino from the Shout Podcast, Syracuse.com, joining us today, Andy, as the NFL schedule now coming out in just a little bit. And as we said, a rookie minicamp just around the corner, kicking off on Friday. Hey, Matt, how you doing?
Wonderful. Thank you for having me on. This is the first time I've been in the studio without John Scott here, so real upgrade.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lot less stress, right?
A breath of fresh air.
Matt, so we have some signings that happened last Friday. Andy and I were out on the golf course with said John Scott. Worst round of my entire golf life. Might have thrown my clubs in the water. I know you've said you've pretty much given up on the sport yourself. So we'll dive more into football here. But when the signings came out, when we were all out there, we all get the alerts on our phone. First name to pop up, Chase Claypool, wide receiver. My first reaction, guys, to that was, wow, Chase Claypool? And then I remembered, I'm thinking years ago, Chase Claypool. The more I sat there and thought about it, the more I was less of a, wow, Chase Claypool kind of guy, Andy.
Yeah, he's a guy who's struggled to really put it together over most of his NFL career. He's a guy who has immense talent, size, speed, all those things when he came out of Notre Dame going to Pittsburgh, but he just hasn't been able to put it together, and he's bounced around the league. But this is a case where they can take a flyer on a guy, see if they can get anything out of him. They've got holes at wide receiver. They've got spots where they can fill in there. I think he's the kind of guy where no harm, no foul. If he doesn't work out, it's fine. You sign him to a small extension or a small contract, and if you get something out of him, great. Big
body guy, Matt. Is there a spot for him on the Bills? What's your thought on them bringing him in?
Yes, and what's funny about this, when the news broke last week, I was surprised at the reaction. Like, people were so in their feelings about this guy. You have, your feet are dug into the mud on whichever side of this argument that you're on. People don't like him, and I didn't realize how much people didn't like him until I put out a podcast shortly after that, kind of talking about how much I liked the signing. There's no investment here. So I think starting just there, that's really important. You're not paying him a lot of money. He's going to come in and have a chance to compete for a job. If you go back and look at some of his highlights from his rookie season, and if you remember, Ben Roethlisberger was in the last year of being competent. In 2021, he absolutely fell off a cliff. We all watched those games. It was hard at times. Claypool's numbers dipped a little bit. I think he needs a quarterback like Josh Allen to find any kind of tread left on the tires. So I like that part of it. I also like the fact that this is a last opportunity for this guy. Like, I heard that there was a little rumblings about maybe the CFL, that not a lot of NFL teams were very interested.
Yeah.
So if you get to that point in your career, if anybody throws you a lifeline, I think if you're the Bills, you're like, let's throw him this lifeline. If there's any meat left on the bone, we're going to get a guy that comes in here, competes his butt off, and at the very least pushes other guys on the roster, guys that you were hoping to take that next step, Tyrell Shavers, Justin Shorter, to be able to make a run at a roster spot. I really like the signing. I think it's a lot like the KJ Hamler move. It's not a big investment. It's a guy that hasn't produced in a while. In Hamler's case, he hasn't been able to stay healthy. But these are the kind of moves you have to make when you're cash-strapped like the Bills are.
I think part of the reason people are mad is because the Bills still haven't done exactly what everybody wanted them to do as far as addressing the departure of Steph Diggs, and that's go out and get that alpha guy, whether that's through a trade, whether that was in the draft. Of course, they get Keon Coleman, but people don't have expectations that he's going to step in and be Steph Diggs or a player of that ilk right away. So I think part of that is Claypool's past, and that
they better hope he doesn't step in and be Steph Diggs.
Right.
Everybody was complaining about Stephon Diggs last year.
Right.
He played 12 straight games, and he was bad.
Right.
Like, he wasn't very good. So I think, that idea that somebody's got to come in here and be what Diggs was in this offense, I don't think you want somebody to be that. I think you want somebody to be better than that. Can Keon Coleman be that? Probably not. But, nobody that you were going to bring in, whether it be in the draft, getting up and getting a Dunze, fine. I can listen to that argument. But this idea that you were going to replace Stephon Diggs, or that Stephon Diggs was even the guy that he was back in 2020 and 2021, that's not necessarily the case, is it?
Yeah, I can get with that.
Andy and I were talking about this a little bit earlier. The NFL Network re-showing all these playoff games recently. I was waiting for my wife to get home. So the Bills-Chiefs game was on, and I did not remember at the time, but re-watching it, how Khalil Shakir, when he got injured and ran off the field, I felt the Bills were doomed then. I thought he was playing way better than Stephon Diggs at the time and where he was, that I'm actually excited at this point to see the next step in Khalil Shakir when you look at this wide receiver group as a whole.
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing I wanted to bring up. I can see a scenario where Khalil Shakir isn't just your slot guy anymore. I think he gets some reps outside, and maybe he's a guy that can step into that Z receiver role outside, and they kind of use Kincaid and Samuel and a mix of people inside. Shakir really came on. Why can't he step up to the next level and become something better than he's shown so far?
He can. Like, I think the fact that they didn't address receiver in a different way, in a more aggressive way, tells you what they think of not only Shakir, but Kincaid as well. That's something that I struggle with people that don't understand this. And I struggle, I just mean having to answer the question over and over again. The Bills traded up last year in the first round to draft Dalton Kincaid for a specific reason. Like, remember when the draft was playing and Daniel Jeremiah said, the league better be ready for what they allowed to just happen. Josh Allen getting Dalton Kincaid. There were talk about him being, Travis Kelce light, a guy that you can build your offense around. How are you going to build your offense around Dalton Kincaid if you got to give a receiver 12 to 15 targets a game, which is what they were force-feeding Stephon Diggs last year for the most part? I really like the idea that now you don't have anybody in this offense that on a week-to-week basis you have to force-feed the ball. Mm-hmm. You can let Josh Allen be a little bit more free with the way that he distributes the ball, and I think that's the key ingredient to the unlocking this offense, is not having one guy that you have to keep happy. Because you go out and get a Dunze, you go out and get Malik Neighbors, you're going to have to get that guy the ball. And if it's not going well, managing the egos, managing the expectations by that player, I just don't think the Bills want to sign up for that again.
So what do you get? What's the Coleman role? What's the Curtis Samuel role when we look at this wide receiver group now with that? And as we've talked about with Kincaid, maybe more of the slot guy, but these other guys in the mix.
Well, Kincaid, I think, Coleman steps in right away in the X receiver spot. Mm-hmm. Kind of fills that Gabe Davis role. Whether he's on the field 95% of the time, I don't know. We'll see how he does as a blocker, how they want to utilize that position. But Brandon Beane came out and said, we're expecting him to contribute right away and likely in that spot. So I think that is pretty solidified. We'll see how it goes through OTAs, minicamp. We get to training camp, and we'll see how he does. But I think that's the expectation for him. Samuel's interesting because they can use him in a wide variety of ways. I mean, they can use him in the slot. They can use him as a gadget guy. I think he's got some juice outside, too. I think that goes to your point of kind of the versatility of what the offense is and maybe a little bit of a shift in philosophy about how they want to do things. And I think we saw that through Joe Brady through the second half of last season.
I view him in kind of more of like that flanker role, that like newer age, like move him around the formation type of thing. Because just calling him a gadget guy, you're right. He does things that a gadget guy does, but he's more than that. Mm-hmm. And they're paying him to be more than that.
Right.
Like if you wanted to sell me on Curtis Samuel leading this team in targets next year, I'd buy it. Joe Brady loves that guy. Like going back to their time in Carolina, they made it a priority to go out and get him. And go back to last season, like when they were force-feeding Stephon Diggs these awful bubble screens at the line of scrimmage and he was doing nothing with them. That's right. Curtis Samuel's specialty. So I think that they're going to ask him to play that role. I think he can work the intermediate area of the field. I think in a certain situation, depending on the how they line up, you can attack downfield with Samuel too. You got a couple of guys that are auditioning for downfield roles. I mean, Justin Shorter in preseason last year, that's where he kind of excelled down the field. I think a Tyrell Shavers gives you down the field kind of opportunities. And then that's what Chase Claypool did so well in Pittsburgh rookie season. I know nobody wants to hear that, but I'm interested to see when he does get to work with Josh Allen, how much does he get to work with Josh Allen in the preseason? Like, that's another thing. We're going to be watching every single day of training camp to see, okay, KJ Hamler, Chase Claypool, Justin Shorter, do any of them get first-team reps? And, like, if they do, like, that's going to become the storyline that we really start to follow.
I think it's interesting, too, because there's so many different guys that they're trying to see what they can get out of people. In the past, the Bills knew what they had in most of their receivers. When you go back to Cole Beasley, when you go back to Steph Diggs, Gabe, they knew about, right? Even going to John Brown and Emmanuel Sanders. These were guys that they knew what they had in. Now they're bringing up a new crop of people with new ways of doing things, new philosophies. We'll see what Joe Brady does as far as his scheme and system. So I think it's all wide open, and I think that in some ways could be to the Bills' benefit when they line up in September and start to play, because I don't think teams will know exactly what to expect of the Bills' offense because they have so many new and different pieces.
And I do subscribe to the philosophy of sometimes in sports, I mean, Stephon Diggs is great, but sometimes that one piece is what is prohibiting you from getting to the next level. I always look at what happened with the Red Sox and Yankees and Alex Rodriguez. It was a killer when you thought Alex Rodriguez, if you were a Red Sox fan, was going to Boston. Then he goes to the Yankees. But it turned out at the end that Alex Rodriguez on the Red Sox probably would have not led to them winning the 2004 World Series. I think in this case, the team moving on from Stephon Diggs, as dumb as it sounded at the time, Matt, maybe it is indeed part of the recipe for success for this offense.
Take Diggs' drama out of it, like all the behind-the-scenes stuff that has been speculated on. How many times can you keep running it back with the same pieces and expect a different result? Like, I think that they got to a point where they said, we have to reimagine this, not only for 2024, but for 25 and 26, which might be really starting to push the limits on Josh Allen's prime.
Right.
And who knows? Maybe Josh Allen's prime lasts till he's 35. I can't predict the future. But typically, once you turn 30, like, that's when things start to go downhill a little bit, or at least you take a step back. So I think that they want to insulate Josh Allen with talent for the next 4 or 5 seasons, and that's not going to include Stephon Diggs. So the earlier you get out of that, I agree with your point too. It goes back to the target part. Like, you have to feed Stephon Diggs if he's in your building. You have to. He's got to get the ball. It's why he wanted out of Minnesota. So I also wonder, now in Houston, with 2 burgeoning stars in Tank Dell and Nico Collins, how's that target share going to work out? Is Diggs going to be okay being 3rd in the pecking order? I can't see that being the case. And does that mean that Nico Collins and Tank Dell, Nico Collins especially, who's trying to get paid this offseason, is he going to be down for like 6 or 7 targets a game? I don't think so. So I'm kind of like,
yeah,
let's see the juicy drama kind of, and CJ Stroud, year 2. Quarterbacks sometimes take a step back in year 2, coming off of a really good sophomore slump, right? I can't wait. I really hope Bills-Texans happens midpoint of the season, because if things aren't going well in Houston, the drama leading up to that game will be just off the charts.
You brought up something I wanted to touch on as far as insulating Josh Allen and extending the prime of his career. Do you guys see at all a shift in philosophy as far as using the running game more, all those sorts of things that have been discussed, and a lot of people don't like to hear it because we know the NFL's a passing league, right? But
I think we started to see that, and I know we started to see that towards the end of last year, especially when the offensive coordinator switch happened, was, well, Joe Brady was taking over what Ken Dorsey had put out there. You could see him slowly adding his touches to it, and maybe that's it. Maybe it is, I don't want to say 50-50 run pass, but a little closer to that with what they might do in the running game. And, I mean, Josh Allen's still going to run the ball. But eventually you're going to get to a point where he can't keep doing that anymore. It happens with age. It's just going to eventually happen. So I think there is a philosophy change of spreading the ball out more, obviously, and getting more from the run game and maybe even more from the running backs in the passing game.
I wasn't surprised when they drafted Ray Davis. Like, I think this is the plan moving forward. Every 2 years, bringing in another back because
a 4th or 5th round back.
Yeah,
You're good.
because you're not going to pay like when James Cook, if he has 2 more great years, he's going to price himself out of Buffalo. Like they're not going to be able to pay him. So you're going to have to kind of roll this thing back every time. Philosophically, go back to New Orleans when Joe Brady was on that staff under Sean Payton. They ran a ton of play action. Like I thought we were going to see more play action mid-season when Brady took over. We saw a little bit of an uptick. But I think we're going to see that become like a cornerstone of this team. So more so than like there's the debate. Like, do you have to be a good running team to be a good play action team? A lot of modern analytics suggest that you don't. Like, just run play action.
You just have to fake it.
You just got to fake it.
Right.
You got to be good at faking it, right?
Right.
But I think that Sean McDermott's a little bit old school. I think he wants to be able to run the ball. I don't think he wants to be a run-oriented team, but when they run it, he wants to be good at it. And then I think like this shift to what they can do at the line of scrimmage in the passing game and a strong run game. Go back to Aaron Kromer too. You want to look at all the pieces on the chessboard. When Aaron Kromer was at his best in L.A., Todd Gurley was leading the league in rushing. So I think that they want to be a good run team, and it takes pressure off Josh Allen. And I also think if you got to worry about a team running the ball against you, you're going to have a hard time defending the deep middle, which is where Josh Allen really wants to attack anyway. You're going to struggle to play that 2-deep shell if the Bills come out and just punch you in the mouth and run all over you. So I think they more than shifting to a different philosophy, they want to be multifaceted as an offense.
I mean, you look at like how they attack Dallas, right?
Great
That's mostly not going to happen again. But
Right.
Dallas had no answers for that attack, as the Bills' offensive line has been upgraded throughout the course of the years. I think James Cook has been an upgrade. He's certainly shown that he's an explosive player. He's patient. He finds the holes. He's capable there. And you brought up Ray Davis. I really like him. And I think you remember, I asked Brandon Beane about, do you need a complimentary back outside of Ty Johnson for James Cook? And Ray Davis was not super high on my list, but looking at the player, he had a ton of success in college through his multiple different stops.
They love that. They love production at the college level. And, like, when you've had 1,000-yard seasons in 3 different stops, and, like, none of those schools blow you away. Temple, Vanderbilt, where did he –
Kentucky.
Kentucky
Right.
was the last one. I mean,
Yeah.
the dude is, like – he's really productive. I think he gives you 2 different things. He's good in between the tackles. He might arguably be better coming out of college in between the tackles than James Cook was.
Sure.
His vision is, like, at the top of his scouting report. But he also, I didn't realize how good of a pass catcher he was. So now you're now becoming even more tough to defend if you're a defensive coordinator, because no matter if Cook's out there, Ty Johnson, or Ray Davis, now you got to defend the run and the pass with the backs.
That dude scored 21 touchdowns in the SEC last season.
Right. That
That's-
is the SEC.
That's production,
Yeah.
right?
And that Kentucky offensive line is not winning any national awards.
Right.
We'll stay on the offensive line since you bring that up, right? So the Bills draft Cedric Van Pran Granger. We already know that the plan was to move Connor McGovern to center, right? And Edwards slides over Andy. So do you actually see this rookie being in the mix with what's going on with this offensive line right now?
I think he certainly can be. I think the plan from the outset will be McGovern and Edwards on the other side of him. But if Van Pran Granger, who was very productive and a 3-year starter at Georgia and won 2 national championships, that guy they think has the versatility to play center and guard. Maybe he doesn't beat out McGovern for center, but he can beat out David Edwards for guard. I mean, who knows? And I think that's a depth piece there. That's a guy who ultimately I think they can develop into a potential starter.
When I heard Bean say that Kromer went down and worked out Van Pran Granger himself, like because of how much they liked him, I was all in on this guy. Like I think from the very beginning, to me, he has a similar trajectory possibility to Osiris Torrance. Like, because remember, going into camp last year, everybody had Ryan Bates winning that position battle. Everybody did. I mean, if you were looking at, as things were going through training camp, he was getting all the first-team reps, and then it kind of started to shift. Torrance started getting more, and all of a sudden the storyline started changing. But to me, Van Pran Granger, he's in a perfect situation. He can come in and wow them and win the job, or they're kind of set with what they have. Don't forget, David Edwards started for the Rams in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. Him accepting that jumbo role was like almost like a 1-year reset. I feel like he had some concussion issues in his final year in L.A., So I think getting a chance to have a reset year and not be asked to play a huge role, I think that was good for him, but I think he's hungry to get that job back, and Cromer trusts him. So I don't know if he would have signed that 2-year deal unless there was kind of a little bit of a under-the-table handshake agreement, like, yeah, that job's yours, buddy.
Right.
We're going to move on from Mitch Morse, and McGovern's going over to center.
So we'll wrap up the offense with this. The goal with the team itself, get younger. We saw them do that. That's what the plan is. Does this now mean that on the offensive side of the ball, younger will equal more explosive offense, more big plays, more run after the catch, more of what the knock on the Bills has been on offense, at least, is those wow plays weren't there. There was not a lot of run after a catch. It'll always stick out to me. Diggs was big at catching the ball, seeing someone was going to tackle him and go down. I thought. It stuck out to me.
Yeah.
So are they more explosive now, or can they be, is probably the better question, Matt. Can they be more explosive on offense this year than they have been with what they have right now?
100%. You ever do those like little race cars? Like when we were kids, like those Matchbox things that you had to kind of like turn them up.
Wind them up.
You wind them up and then they go.
Right.
Like I feel like that's Gabe Davis, right? Like when he gets up there, he's going. But until then, you got to wind him up for a minute. Like I don't think that the run after catch was ever a possibility for Gabe Davis in a lot of spots because of that. Samuel is ready-made to be a yak contributor from the jump. I think Shakir has more run after the catch than even we've seen out of him because of the role that he played and the lack of opportunities. When they threw him the ball, he took full advantage. I mean, his touchdown production, first down production, it's great. But I think the next step for him is run after the catch. And then Coleman, I made the argument of how much I liked the draft pick because of the potential run after the catch. Like, he's the opposite of Diggs. He's never going to catch the ball and go down. He's going to catch the ball and look around and run at the guy that's the furthest away.
I'm 6'3", 215. I'm coming for you.
Exactly.
Right.
Run somebody over. I think it's going to be hard for defensive backs to tackle him. So if he breaks that first tackle once the ball's in his hands, that's when you have another element of rack. Because rack is like, it's different for everybody. Some guys, they need to get separation, have the room to work, then just blaze by guys. Coleman's going to be a bulldozer, and I think I like that about him, where Samuel is more of that. He had that 4.3 speed. He's going to win in a different way. They got a lot of different ways to get rack.
Mm-hmm. We're in line for Kincaid to have a monster year, I think.
Okay.
I think we saw through the second half of last season, his targets were further downfield. He was able to break more big plays. He was obviously utilized more. Beginning of the season, it was all kind of around the line of scrimmage, outlets for Josh, those sorts of things.
Yeah.
I think Kincaid can be that seam stretcher, right? That guy, if teams are going to play a too-high shell, run Kincaid down the middle, get over the linebacker, that middle linebacker, and in between those two safeties, and you're picking up 15 yards a pop. There's some explosiveness there as well that I think hasn't been unlocked yet for the Bills.
Mm-hmm. We'll kick off the defensive side of the ball with the two signings that they had last Friday. Start with Deion Jones, linebacker. Someone had brought this up to me. I have a lot of Boston College friends that were wondering if this has something to do with Matt Milano, maybe an insurance policy for Matt Milano if he's not ready to go by bringing in Deion Jones, played in 13 games for the Carolina Panthers last season.
I don't think he's more of a middle linebacker, so I don't know if he's going to be depth on the outside. He probably has some versatility. They don't bring in guys that they don't think can play multiple roles. I think it's insurance for Dorian Williams. Like, we saw Terrell Bernard take that year 1 to year 2 step, but I think to expect that out of every draft pick, day 2 draft pick, that's a lot to expect. I mean, Terrell Bernard at times looked like a superstar last year.
Right.
So I think that they want to kind of see what the offseason looks like with Dorian Williams. They also brought in Nicholas Morrow. I really like this Edouan Ulofoshio, who Bishop Gorman kid went and absolutely looked like a stud at Washington for a couple of years. Comes in, he's probably going to play mostly special teams, but he's now another depth piece that I think you really like. They love Balin Spector if the guy could just stay on the field,
right?
and that's the problem with him. I think you're going to be dealing with the health issues, and you get to a point with a guy after 2 seasons where If we can't count on you and you don't have a healthy training camp, that might affect the final decision at that position. And a guy like Ulofoshio might just push Spector out and then maybe try to get him back on the practice squad or something like that. I think Jones, to me, he feels a lot like who was the guy that they brought in last year from Houston? He got caught. He
retired, right?
He retired a week after they brought him in.
Yep.
Christian Kirksey.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. This to me, I think Morrow's more of the Milano.
Okay.
He can play middle. He can play outside. And they made him a priority early in free agency. And I think Jones is another guy that's played a lot of games in the league, played middle too. And Terrell Bernard, biggest game of the season last year, he was unavailable. So they needed, I think, a couple spots.
And I think, too, Jones and Morrow, to a degree, represent something that the Bills always like, which is veteran presence. Even if those guys aren't the starters, they lost Tyrell Dodson, who had been a veteran guy and who had been there for a long time. Even with Milano and with Bernard. Young guy, right? Dorian Williams, young guy. So they like to have those veteran presence and that depth backup. I think those two guys fit that bill.
Okay.
I think that's actually John in my ear. And he said, please don't move that far away from the mic.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Come on, there's rules set in place here, Andy. We got to follow them. Defensive end Dwayne Smoot also signed last Friday. Matt, your thoughts on adding him?
I like the addition. I'm very interested to see where he's at health-wise. Coming off of the Achilles in 2022, you saw a dramatic drop-off. I mean, he was getting like around 70 Pro Football Focus pass rush grades for 21, 22. Last season, it fell to like somewhere around 50. Mm-hmm. He just was not generating the kind of pressure, and that's why he's available for teams in late May. He was a 6-7 sack guy consistently for about 4 seasons, former third-round draft pick. I'm very concerned about the edge rusher position because Von Miller, I have to go into the season with my expectations quelled to a very large degree because he just was ineffective. Now, he's a very proud guy. I would imagine he was an elite player before the injury. I'd imagine we're going to see an uptick in production just because he's had a full offseason to try to get himself right. But sometimes at that age, those injuries never heal like to 100%. You're never the same player again. So I think going in, man, Greg Rousseau and A.J. Epinesa have a ton on their plate. A.J. Epinesa, actually, they're almost like, prove it, kid. Mm-hmm. Come in here, become what Leonard Floyd was for us last year.
We're going to give you the chance to do it.
Yeah, and now you could go on the other end of this thing. He's on a 2-year deal, but maybe he can get an extension, get a big-term contract. If he could come out, they're almost, the way they've constructed the edge room, they're almost banking on A.J. Epinesa taking a monstrous step.
And Bean and McDermott have both said that. Like, hey, we need him to step up this season. McDermott really said it, that this is a big year for him, and we need him to continue that ascension. He's had a couple of good years in a row where he showed pretty good improvement over where he was in his first couple of seasons. Now it's time for him to take that next step. If he's going to be relied upon to be a starter, say he's opposite Greg Rousseau, that's a big role if Vaughn isn't Vaughn, right? And they can't get him to that point. So there's space on this roster for a Dwayne Smoot potentially to come in and have an impact and have a chance like a Leonard Floyd. Is he Leonard Floyd? No, but if he comes back from injury and does well in that regard, there's an opening there possibly.
Where we stand right now, guys, we can start with you, Andy. What do you expect then from this defensive line? Do you expect an overall upgrade then from what we saw? I'll go back to that Chiefs game at the end again. It was very unimpressive, the pass rush in that divisional round game.
That's been the knock for all these years. The Bills have invested so heavily in the defensive line, and we know that they like to rotate 8-9 guys every game, and they like to have multiple defensive tackles, and sometimes they'll have 5 defensive ends active for game day. In those biggest moments, it just hasn't shown up. Now, a couple of years ago, we might have missed out on Von Miller, who was playing really well that season before he blew out his knee. I don't know. I mean,
he beat the Chiefs that year.
Right.
Remember?
Yeah.
In the regular season?
He had that play at the end that forced that play to Mahomes that made. And yeah, so I think if Miller can get back to any semblance of that, sure. Obviously, they lose a 10-sack guy in Leonard Floyd. But you bring back Jones, right? And you still have Ed Oliver, and you've you've retooled a little bit, but I don't see any massive difference in what you might expect.
The most underappreciated or least talked about draft storyline was the addition of Dwayne Carter. Because what I think his value is, more than being a productive pass rusher, run stopper, he gives the Bills a true backup for Ed Oliver, which means you can take Ed Oliver's snap count back a little bit. He was playing like 85% of the snaps towards the end of the last season. He ran out of gas. He was invisible in that Chiefs game, to your point. Yeah. And I think that's because they changed who they were philosophically as a team, like their approach to how they run their rotation. And Ed Oliver was just out there on an island. Go win against Joe Tooney and Creed Humphrey over and over again. It's not going to work. You need to keep that guy fresh and put him in spots to be successful. So Carter needs to come in year one and be a really important cog in this wheel. And, I'm going to put out my 53-man roster projection later today. And one of the big things is I only have them keeping 4 defensive tackles because I think Carter's going to have a huge role. And I think Austin Johnson is a guy that they brought in. He played with Daquan Jones before. He's going to be that primary backup to him. And now you have a 4-man rotation. And who's the other guy we were talking about? Deshaun Williams. Deshaun Williams, yep. Coming over from Denver. He's played a couple years, a little bit of a journeyman. They could probably get him back on the practice squad. But out on the edge, here's another bold prediction. I could see a scenario where we get to the end of the season and Greg Rousseau is starting opposite Kingsley Jonathan.
Certainly possible.
At his height in his first 2 seasons, Jonathan's been a problem. I go back to his rookie year when he came up and played against the Bears. He had a couple of impact plays. One was a penalty, so it got kind of brought back. But he brings juice off the edge. I think he's somebody that Brandon Beane showed you what they thought of him when they didn't cut him at the 53-man roster breakdown last year. I think he's definitely going to be in the mix, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Bills are also kind of on the lookout for anybody that gets cut at the end of August to add to that room. I don't think they're done at edge.
Let's talk about defensive back right now, and we'll start with safety. Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, not in the mix anymore after all these years. Going to be hard to believe. Cole Bishop, the second-rounder pick out of Utah, safety who can play in multiple spots at the safety position, either strong safety, free safety. Are they still called that, or are they called something else now?
They still exist.
Oh, okay. Right. Matt, does he have a chance to start right and make an immediate impact? I think he does. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, definitely. I think that if we were taking bets, I think it would be like minus 200 that he earns a starting job, right? The baseline for me with Bishop is that third safety role. The Bills went to the dime look a ton last season, and Taylor Rapp played that role last year. I think Rapp's probably their number 1 safety at this point on the roster. You could talk about Mike Edwards. Maybe he's in the mix there. But however they end up, he's got to beat out – Cole Bishop has to beat out one of those 2 guys for a spot. If he doesn't, I think the best way to kind of bring him into that defense is have him be like a little bit of a rover, kind of play like that, like in the box, hybrid linebacker role.
Special packages.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think he can do that. But the way they talked about him in the draft and they were willing to trade up for him, it sounds like they got big plans for Cole Bishop.
He's just the kind of guy they love. Versatile, smart, hard-hitting. Loves Kincaid, right? Went against
that's
Kincaid.
Right. Yeah, I blanked on that first.
Right. So I think he certainly has a shot to go out there. I mean, Taylor Rapp, I think they bring him back for the money they did. He's probably going to get one of those spots, but who's to say that Cole Bishop can't beat out Mike Edwards? Or to Matt's point, they play in combination. They use them in different packages. Maybe one of them is on the field in certain sets or against certain teams, certain matchups, that sort of thing. And Bishop, I think, too, they really like, and he likes of himself and brought this up multiple times, his ability to cover the tight end. Mm-hmm. And that's been a sore spot at times for the Bills over the last few years. If they got a guy they think in dime packages or he can come in as a sub and play against tight ends, that's great.
Travis Kelce takes a step back. You have this young guy in. Perfect combination, right?
Yeah, sure.
I thought Travis Kelce was taking a step back last year, and then the playoffs happened.
Right.
Yeah, no, I was with.
They're like the Bulls of the 90s. They just turn it on, right?
Yeah.
We're going to turn it on at playoff
Except they're committed
time.
to staying together.
Right.
Right. Rookie minicamp coming up first. Then you have organized team activities. Then you have mandatory minicamp. What are you guys expecting to see? What are you guys looking to see rookie minicamp, and then the off-season workouts start?
I'm looking to see Keon Coleman. I mean, he is the they put out the embedded episode. I watched a little bit of that. I got to finish it off. But he is appointment television at this point. Everything that he does, I think, is interesting. I have not seen a second-round pick like trend the way that he did in a while. I don't know if I can even remember one. Like the NFL was sharing his introductory press conference, and
Right.
he's great behind the mic. But I actually want to see what he looks like on the field. And it's hard. Rookie minicamp's tough because they bring in a couple tryout quarterbacks, and sometimes
They're not
it's-
playing a whole lot of defense.
No,
Right.
But the quarterbacks are bad, man.
Yeah.
So there's some. I remember some years where guys are getting balls thrown at their cleats, and I mean maybe that's a chance for them to make some like really special catches, and those go viral on social media. But I want to see Carter. I want to look at some of these offensive linemen, these mammoth tackles that they took on day 3. I mean, Tylen Grable. You know, his combine workout, he reminds me a lot of what they thought about Spencer Brown without, like, necessarily the production. Although Spencer Brown in his last year was COVID. He didn't even play his last year. So, people thought so much of him that he went in the 3rd round. This guy ends up going in the 6th. And I want to see this Travis Clayton.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
absolute physical marvel. And you got guys all over the draft space raving about this kid. I mean, this could be the next Jordan Mailata. Could you imagine if Brandon Beane finds his right tackle of the future in the 7th round from the UK?
Right. who runs a sub 4.8 40
Right.
at 6'7", 300 and some pounds. That's really incredible. I'm with you. I'm looking for Keon Coleman. I think that guy has star potential. And it's interesting, the way the narrative has kind of shifted throughout last college football season, through the draft process and the combine, now back through the draft and his viral moments at his press conference in Buffalo. There's some juice now to say a lot of analysts like Keon Coleman. After all you heard throughout the draft process was, I don't know, he doesn't have the separation, the explosiveness, the speed. But then he does all these things that are magnanimous, right? And he's this guy, this big personality with obviously great athleticism and skill, right?
I will say this, watching from my point of view outside of the Bills media room we see all the time a player will come out, kind of be goofy and make a joke. I always remember London Fletcher would always laugh at his own jokes to cue the media to kind of laugh.
If one person laughs, right?
Right. That's all you need. But legitimately, watching it from not being at a press, the guy just looks and comes off as such a really cool dude, a really laid-back dude who's just himself. Yeah. And it's legit making you laugh rather than, oh, coach kind of said something funny, Diggs kind of said something funny. This legit had me dying laughing sitting there watching.
I think you put it really well. He's being himself, and he just seems comfortable in his own skin, which is a good thing for a guy who's a rookie who's had some up and down talk about him throughout the years.
Yeah.
He's just comfortable in who he is, and it can maybe step in and have a big role right away.
He's so young.
Yeah.
I mean, he's 20 years old. He hasn't really even experienced a full season yet of football. Like, I think he missed a little bit of time at the end of last season. He was playing basketball and football at Michigan State, so that the back and forth there, although he had some really good games at Michigan State, and that was when he was kind of playing second fiddle to Jaden Reed at the time. So I think that there's a lot of potential here, but the biggest thing for me about Coleman, what he brings is like a breath of fresh air in the locker room. Like, and it's weird because this isn't a perfect talking point because Stephon Diggs was well liked in the room. Like, he was a great teammate. Guys liked him. But I do think that there was a fatigue of this, like, whether it was implied or perceived or real rift between him and Josh Allen. Keon Coleman is coming in here day one. What do you need, Josh Allen? I want to be that for you.
Right.
We are best friends. We're going golfing together. Like, we're gonna hang together. I'm gonna be like,
Tiger wish he could.
Tiger wish he could, right?
Right.
And listen, I know Josh Allen was Tiger wish he could in the match a couple of years ago,
Right.
so they have something in common there. But I think they needed to find somebody that was going to offer leadership in a different flavor than what Stephon Diggs was last year.
He was intense, especially on game days where he was so keyed up, Diggs, and wanted to win so bad. And we all talk about that competitiveness, and that was, used as a reason for some of his outbursts and things like that. I think you're right. That may have worn on the locker room in some ways. Well-liked guy, but he still was kind of doing his own thing at times. We know how Diggs is. And this is no Diggs slander. It's how he is. So
Right.
what a new young kid, puppy dog eyes, coming in willing to learn, I think that's awesome. And it almost reminds me of that goofy kid like Josh is in some ways. Like Allen has that goofy personality, and everybody says, oh, he's one of the boys, and Josh has to remind himself that he's a quarterback. Maybe that kind of personality fits in really well with Allen's. We'll see.
Before we go, schedule coming out next week. The long-awaited Bills schedule. Everyone waits for it to come out. Let's do this, guys. Let's start off with favorite idea for what the Bills opener will be. I'll start. I expect it, and I don't want it to be the Jets at the Bills to open the season. It just feels like they're in that kind of thing where that just seems like it's what the NFL is going to do and kind of retry what they did last year with Aaron Rodgers being back. I wouldn't mind seeing Jacksonville come to Buffalo to start the season. I think it would be an interesting matchup. We haven't seen it in a few years. The teams have all kind of changed since that ugly Bills game down in Jacksonville 2 seasons ago. So, Andy, I'm a big fan with that. I would like to see that maybe a 4 o'clock game and not a primetime game to start.
I would enjoy a Sunday 1 o'clock home opener.
Okay.
To start the season. However, I don't necessarily know that that's going to happen. Bills are darlings of prime time. We'll see what the NFL schedule makers think about that still. You brought this up earlier as a midseason game, but what about prime time or a 4 o'clock game?
It's fresh.
At Houston right away. Bills and Allen versus Diggs and the Texans right away. It's juicy.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. The Texans made the playoffs. They're a team that is really popular right now and that is growing in terms of NFL circles and the way they're talked about. And then you got the old dog, the Bills, playing that role against them. I think that could be really fun. Maybe a 4 o'clock game or a primetime game. That could be a Monday nighter kind of game too.
Bills have opened on the road the last few years, right?
Last 2, I think, yeah.
Okay.
Are the Chiefs coming to Buffalo again?
The Chiefs are coming to Buffalo.
I know there's been some talk about potentially that on Christmas.
No.
We'll
Please,
get
no.
there.
We'll get to that in a sec.
I actually would not mind a Christmas game as long as it's a home game. Like, because that means I can wake up with my kids, do the whole thing, and then go down to the stadium. I was listening to the local radio station on the way in, and they were talking about, do the schedule makers, they don't think about this, but people would be building their trips back home for a home game around being able to come home for Christmas. Like, maybe you don't get to come home for Christmas every year, but the Bills are playing at home this year, and you're going to schedule it to come to the game and do the whole Christmas week stuff. Again.
And that's going to be like a Wednesday game, right?
I think so, yeah.
Oh, my God. I don't know if I'm down for a Wednesday Christmas morning game, but it is what it is.
It's not about you, Andy.
Be there.
It's about the families.
It is certainly not.
It's about the families.
It's about my family who wants to see me on Christmas.
They will see you in the morning. Wake up at 5. By the way, what time are you waking up anyway? I'm getting pulled out of bed at about 5:30 a.m. So we have plenty of time to do a full Christmas morning.
So we've done the thing where we'll say, if you're going to wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning, you can go find your stocking. You can open your stocking that Santa brought you. We're not opening gifts until like 7.
Wow. So I thought you were going to go later than that even.
No.
I have not.
7.
We have not opened presents in my house with it being light out. Maybe since the kids were babies.
And our kids are the exact same ages.
Yes.
Yours and mine. So.
Yes. But you have a little bit more control, apparently. But you know what it is? Here's the thing. Me and my wife, we're big Christmas suckers.
Yeah.
So I think, like,
you're into it just
we're
as much
so
as
much
them.
into it.
Yeah.
We're like, my wife does this big extravagant thing where she'll set up the it looks like a scene out of a movie. And so we'll come down and we want to get to it. Like we want to see the kids open it. Like, so we're part of the problem.
I get it. The question was, who do you see the Bills doing on opening weekend?
I think it's probably going to be the Jets.
Yeah, I think that's
I think
what
it's been the
gonna
Jets, like 3 of the last 5 years or something like that. It feels like every year that's easy money, like whether it's going to New York or here.
Mm-hmm.
So now we'll go back to the holiday thing. Thanksgiving game, too. I mean, it seems like the Bills play Thanksgiving all the time now. Would you rather Thanksgiving Day game?
No.
Or
Because it's probably going to be an away game. Are they playing the Cowboys or Lions, the Bills, this year?
They are playing at the Lions.
Oh, my God.
That's gonna be the Thanksgiving game again.
Talbot's going to be so excited. He loves Detroit. And he goes to the Thanksgiving game, and he loves Detroit. I hate Detroit. I don't want to go. I don't want to go on Thanksgiving anywhere, but I definitely don't want to go to Detroit on Thanksgiving.
This is why we bring Parrino in.
Right.
I love this.
So that's
you
happening.
You can
Mark
bet-
it down. I'm going to Detroit on Thanksgiving. I'm sorry, honey.
Jets,
Right.
Detroit on Thanksgiving, Kansas City on Christmas. I don't travel, Matt. Favorite road trip when you look at the Bills' schedule coming up?
We were talking about it on the walk up here. Like, I've never been to Seattle.
A1.
So I'm
Awesome.
super pumped. I've heard so many great things. And I think I'm 4 stadiums away from going to every NFL stadium. This is going to be my 7th year on the beat coming up here. And so Seattle marks another one off. I would have gone to the Raiders in Las Vegas, but it was the COVID year, and nobody was traveling. And then I got to go to Arizona, and I think there's one more in there. So I'm looking forward to Seattle.
All right.
Seattle's my number one. I did get the chance to go to that a few years ago. That was awesome. Seattle's a cool city. I've never been to L.A.
I was going to say, L.A.
So that'll be
to
cool.
me seems
LA
like
sucks.
something. All right.
LA sucks, Kevin.
This
I
guy's
don't-
throwing cold water on everything.
I've been to San Diego. I've
San
never
Diego's
been to
beautiful.
LA. Yeah.
My cousin lives there. I love San Diego. Went to his wedding there. Did a couple things. When I lived in Las Vegas, we did a couple Thanksgivings up there. Los Angeles, too many people. Too many people, number one. You get in, you go stay near the airport because you can't go too far in because they play right there. Like, it's close to the airport, so you don't want to stay. I don't like the LA trip. I'm out on the LA trip.
I just want to say I've been once.
And then Miami.
Yes, that's important.
And then Miami, you've been to Miami plenty, right? It just when it's in December,
I'm ready.
it seems like
I'm
a
ready
good
for the
time.
Miami trip, no matter what time of year it is. I like the Miami trip.
Elbow room.
No,
You're
no.
not an elbow room
I'm not an
guy.
elbow room guy, but my buddy Marcel Louis Jacques
Yeah.
lives down there, so we'll hang with him and his fiance. And great tacos.
All right.
Great you get good tacos in Los Angeles, but you got to drive an hour and a half to go 3 miles to find it. So I'm out on that.
Wow, you have me thinking I never want to go to L.A. ever in my life.
You don't even like to leave Williamsville.
Yeah, I don't leave
Yeah.
Williamsville that often.
There's good spots. There's good spots in LA. It's just I'm not a traffic guy. Like, that's one thing coming back to Buffalo that I didn't realize how much I missed was just the ease of traffic. Like, Las Vegas wasn't even that bad, but like you go to a city like LA or even like Fort Lauderdale, Miami, like in between there, it gets real hectic. You take it for granted. I mean, I was running a little late today. I had to get here by 10. I live in Amherst. Just jumped on the thruway. I was here lickety split. 11 minutes. I was like, I'm walking in. I got in so fast, I walked by Andy. I had to come back outside and bring him back in.
He didn't tell you he made a pit stop at the bathroom.
I did.
Oh, all right.
So I never saw him until I'm waiting
So,
outside for him.
I bought these 1.5 liters. I'm getting after it every morning.
Yeah.
Drinking a lot of water. Trying to be healthy. You know what I mean? But
Looks good on you.
what comes with that is bathroom breaks.
Oh, I know that. I mean, I probably fill this up probably 10 to 20 times when I get in at 3 in the morning and leave at, I'll say, noon.
Well, the older you get, you have those kind of issues too.
Yeah, it's only going to get worse for me going downhill.
All right. This podcast is going downhill.
Off the rails.
How about the Thursday night opener? What do you guys think with the Chiefs? I have their home opponents here: Broncos, Bengals, Chargers, Texans, Raiders, Saints.
I can see it being the Texans.
I could see it being the Texans, too.
Chargers with Harbaugh.
Yeah. Yeah, why not?
Division game.
You
Yeah.
could do
I
the
like that.
Bengals, too. There are a lot of options there. Of course, we had this last year, and it ended up being Detroit, and everyone went, what?
Yeah.
And then Detroit beat them.
Yeah.
Yeah, lines are good.
Yeah.
All right, we'll start wrapping it up now. Anyone see the Tom Brady roast?
I saw
No.
clips of it online.
It was pretty raunchy. 3 hours, a little bit too long. From what I was told, all of them are 3 hours. They just edited them down for Comedy Central, but this one on Netflix. So if you have a solid sense of humor and can handle some real naughty talk,
They really got after
was-
Gronk
it
too,
was pretty good.
didn't they?
They got after Gronk. They got after Belichick. Drew Bledsoe, surprisingly, was pretty funny during it. Which, when Bledsoe came to the podium, I was like, it's Drew Bledsoe. What are you going to get?
He drank a couple bottles of his wine.
Couple of
before,
he was good,
He was
man.
having a good time.
He's living the life now.
A little double back wine
Yeah.
before he went out
Good to
there. All right, Matt, what do you got coming up? What do you got ahead?
So we will be back at Wingnuts, our live show every month. We'll be back there a week from Friday, which will be nice. It'll be that jumping off point in between rookie minicamp and OTAs that start the following week. So come out there, 1402 Millersport Highway. Get yourself some delicious wings, some delicious beers, Andy Young.
I have not had Wingnuts wings yet either. I need to.
Dude!
And I always get your Facebook invites, and I haven't shown up yet.
Yeah,
I
never
haven't been there either.
Andy's that kind of guy. He doesn't accept or decline. He likes to keep his options open, and I respect that.
Are you sending these invites to every person on your friends group list?
No, you're
This
special.
is personalized. Oh, see now
I send out 4 or 5 invites per show. Do you get one every show?
most.
So that must tell you how
Well,
much I want you to go. No,
I guess I need to be there.
No, there's an option in Facebook where you can send it out to your entire friend group.
Right? Yeah. Thanks. That's why I don't show up.
All right.
I accept every time. I just never show up, and
Well,
I live
it's
right
not
down
in
the road.
Williamsville. It's not Williamsville.
Well, I also go to bed at 4 o'clock in the morning.
He won't.
Or in the evening.
He won't be there, even if he tells you he will.
Okay. All right.
That's true. All right, and Andy.
Yes.
John always did this part because I'm me.
All right. Yes.
What do the viewers need to do again?
We need you to follow us on YouTube, Buffalo End Zone. Like, subscribe, share, all that good stuff. You can catch our podcasts anywhere where you get your podcast, Apple, Google, Spotify, all that good stuff. We're there. We're growing, trying to build this thing and continue on with the Buffalo End Zone podcast.
And Andy and I will be back here next week with a look at what went down at rookie minicamp. As always, thanks for joining us, everyone.